So I have a camera and I will be recording all of this because it's going in a Zoom meeting for the have a seat. So I will be recording this for the people that are joining us through Zoom, which is only 2, and they're only there because they're not in the country yet. Okay, as I said last week as well, the rule is that we do everything in the lab unless something terrible happens, like you've been told to isolate or something like that, in which case you can continue working from home. If that happens, you need to send me an email and I will send you the instructions on how to connect remotely to the lab and actually work from home. Okay. Now, every week you will need to sit on the same computer that you're sitting on now. All right, because all of the changes that you will make will be there for the rest of the semester. So there's a continuity to this, to the labs. Okay, so you will be building something and you will be working on that something that you're building for the rest of the semester. All right, so wherever you're sitting now, you'll be sitting for the rest of the semester. If you don't like where you're sitting now, you can change only today. All right, you need to make sure that you can see the whiteboard and read stuff on the projector. All right, if you can't, while I'm explaining stuff, you can move your chair closer and it's fine, it's not a problem. All right, so today we're going to start with getting you set up on the computers themselves. All right, so you'll need to log in, and in order to log in, you need a username and a password. So the username for all of you is VM1. Okay, and your password is localhost1. Okay, so I want you to try and log in while we're at it. So VM1, localhost1. If your computer is not on, turn it on. I will only continue explaining stuff after you're all logged in. VM1, localhost1. So small. Share all that. Something wrong with that. The end of the world. practice, please. Well done. Right, so two people walking. Yes, there was another intervention. Okay, so for the two people that came in late, you need to log in with username VM1 and password localhost1. Yes, localhost1. Okay. You're in? All right, good. So now the next step is I want you to go on to Moodle. So start the browser. It's either going to be Firefox or Google Chrome. And I want you to go to Moodle and log in so that you can find the lab sheet. All right. So do that now. So if you go to applications on the top left corner, there should be a menu that says Internet, I think. Applications, Internet. Yep, and click on Firefox. And then you need to go to moodle.port.ac.uk. That's moodle.port.ac.uk, and then if you log in, that's with your normal username and password. Moodle.port.ac.uk with dots in between, okay? Okay, so once you're in Moodle, you should be able to go to week 2 that says Linux setup and find the lab sheet there. Right. Okay. Okay, most of you are there. All right. So I'll go ahead and explain what we'll be doing in the lab set. All right. So we will be setting up the computers so that you work in them. Now, what happens is we will be setting up what is called the nested environment. So we will set up one virtual machine today that will be your server of sorts. And inside that, we will set up VMware again and set up other virtual machines in there so that we can do everything that we want to do in the lab sets. All right. The reason why we're doing this and we're not just setting up the operating system on the host itself, try to find an empty computer. There's one there, second to the end. And that one apparently doesn't want to play ball today. So do you want to work like next to each other? Do you care about this or not? That's fine. Yeah, okay. So you need to work there. Or yes, you can both work there. Okay. So that you don't feel left out. You know? All right. On this side, please. This side. Okay, so you need to do nothing and just listen to what I say. All right. Okay, so we're setting up the computer so that you can work inside. The reason why we're not setting up the operating system itself on the computer itself is so that we can have these computers running at all times, and then you can connect remotely to these and work in the evening if you want. All right. So I will show you, there is a guide on how to do this, and I will share that link with you later on. Okay, so the reason for this is so that if you see that you're struggling with progress later on in the semester, after towards the last few weeks, and you're panicking so that you come and use the computers, you don't actually have to come here and use the computers. You can use them from home. Okay, the problem with this lab is that it's very heavily populated. So especially after I start teaching my first year module after the 6th week, there is never any free time to come and work in the lab. The lab is always busy with classes. All right. So after 5 or 6 o'clock in the evening, if you really have to, and only if you're struggling with progress, you can connect remotely and work on the computer yourself. All right. So we're setting up one computer today, one virtual machine, and this will be our host. So essentially, I will draw sort of diagram. So you have a computer that you're sitting on. So I will create this example for my computer. All of your computers have names and IP addresses. The name of your computer is on the sticker on your monitor. And the last part of the IP address of your computer is on a green sticker that says VLAN something on the socket in front of you. Okay, so okay, so this way you know where you're working, which IP address you will be working with. Another way to know your IP address, and this is safer as well, is to open a terminal and type the command ifconfig. So that command will show you which IP address you have on the computer that you're working on. All right. So my computer is called Shumi. Okay. And I and you as well have VMware player set up and installed on your computers. So in there is VMware. Okay, now the first thing that you'll do is start up VMware and create a new computer in there. That new computer, you will name it Prometheus. It's in the lab set, don't worry about it. Okay. Prometheus was the guy that stole the fire from the gods and gave it to humans in ancient Greek mythology. Because I'm Greek. Okay. So, and yes, all of your computer names are Formula 1 drivers because we like cars. There's a reason behind everything. Okay, so your computer will have a network card. It's going to be called ENO1 that will connect you to the outside world. So for my computer, my ENO1 has an IP address of 148.197.28.11 for my computer. Okay. So for your computer, if you type ifconfig on your host, you will be able to see what IP address your ENO1 has. It will be 2865 to 70, 81 to 85, or whatever it is. Okay. So the first thing that you need to do on your logbook is you need to write down your computer name and your IP address. Okay. Logbook. You will need to keep a logbook of everything that you do in the lab because you will get marked on this later on, as we said, as I explained in the lecture last week. All right. So you need to create a document. You can either create a Google Doc and you can share it with me if you like. Okay. Or you can create a document in your computer itself here and work on it. Or you can bring your laptop with you, have a document with you running, and do that there. Okay, it's not a problem. You bring your laptop, you connect to the university's Wi-Fi, and then you have internet access and everything from there as well. Okay, so the first thing in your logbook needs to be your computer name and your IP address. So once you have that, you need to set up your virtual machine, which will be called Prometheus, and it will be a CentOS 7 virtual machine. So we're dealing with Linux here, all right? And we like Red Hat stuff. We like Debian stuff as well, but not too much. All right, so we'll be working with CentOS 7. So your job for today will be to download the CentOS 7 ISO from CentOS.org, and then create a virtual machine in your computer according to the specifications that I have set out in the lab sheet that's gone. Great. Okay, so really? All right. Screen. Okay, so the first thing that you need to do is you need to go and download the ISO image for your CentOS installation. Now, this you can find on the link there. If you don't want to type the whole link in, just type CentOS.org, then look for the download section. You need CentOS 7, and download it, and that's it. So this will be an ISO image. It's about 4 gigabytes, 4.9 if I remember correctly. Okay, and it needs to be version 7.9. All right, so the safest way to get the correct image is to type exactly that onto your browser. Okay, now once that downloads, you will have it in your downloads folder, so keep it there and remember you have it there. And then you need to start up VMware and create a new virtual machine. The instructions are pretty much step by step from here on. Okay, so just follow what it says in the lab set. Some steps might not be exactly as they are. You can either use common sense, or if you don't trust yourself, raise your hand and I will come and help you out with it. Okay? Yes. Okay, so the first thing that the wizard will ask you is to set the DVD drive, because you will want to install an operating system, obviously, from it. Okay, so you set the DVD to be an ISO image, and then you select the CentOS 7 ISO image from your downloads folder and click next. Once you do that, it will ask you what operating system are we using. You're going to say it's a Linux operating system, and you need to, there's a drop-down menu. You need to go through the list and find CentOS 7 in there. Once you find it, then you need to go to the next page. You need to name your virtual machine Prometheus. Okay. Give it a name, then it will ask you for hard drive space. Your computers are set up as follows. There is one 500 gigabyte NVMe hard drive that is running the operating system and everything else on it. And then there's a second hard drive that is 1 terabyte in size, and it's just a normal Intel SSD hard drive. Okay, so you want to be using that 1 terabyte hard drive. At this step, it will ask you how much disk space you want your virtual machine to have, and it will tell you that you have available to use 1 terabyte of space. Hello, sit, are you alone? Hello, sit there, please. Yeah. So it will tell you that there is 1 terabyte of hard drive space available to use. If it doesn't tell you that, please call me at your desk. This is a very important step. If it says you only have 500 gigabytes to use, it means that there's been a mistake somewhere and you're using the wrong hard drive, and things will go horribly wrong from there on. All right, so I will need to fix that. So after you check that you have the correct hard drive, those 200 gigabytes of space that you will create for your virtual machine, as far as the guest operating system is concerned, it's just a file. So once you create the virtual machine, it will create a folder that's called Prometheus in your home folder, the VMware directory. And then in there, you will find some VMDK files, and that will be your hard drive space. Okay, so don't worry about formatting the host or deleting anything. Everything that you do inside your Prometheus VM will only matter inside your Prometheus VM. Okay, so if you break it, it doesn't matter. You're not breaking the host itself. You're only breaking the virtual machine that you create. Okay, so those 200 gigabytes of space that you will create, they won't show up. You won't see any hard drive partitioning taking place or anything like that. It will just be files created on a computer. All right, so once you give it the space, then it will say, okay, it will give you a preview of all the hardware that your new virtual machine will have. And you need to click on the button that says customize hardware. We're doing that because we want to beef up our virtual machine. Because remember, our virtual machine will be the server that will host all of the other virtual machines inside. Now, the computers that you're sitting on are brand new. You're actually the first students to use them, being a Monday morning of the first week of the labs. All right. They are 6-core Xeon, so they have 12 logical CPUs, and you're running on 64 gigabytes of RAM. All right. So they're pretty good, I think. So we will need to give some space, some CPU and RAM for your virtual machine. So I want you to set your virtual machine to use 4 CPU cores, enough to run 3 or 4 virtual machines inside it. Okay. and I wanted to give it 16 gigabytes of RAM. The virtual machines that you will create will have 2 or 4 gigabytes of RAM. We'll see how it goes. All right, we're doing it like that so that they can be 3 of you working simultaneously on the same computer. I hope it never happens. Okay, but I'm sure that towards the end of the semester, chaos will ensue once you all realize that you need to submit your logbooks and everything else. So you will all connect remotely and work on this. All right, but only in the evenings, yes, not during the day. So during the day, when you are in the lab, you should have exclusive use of the computer itself. All right. So once you set up the memory and the CPU cores, you need to set up the network connection. By default, the network will be NAT. So that's network address translation. So this is one of the modes of networking that VMware supports. It means that VMware creates a DHCP server and it gives some private IP address to the virtual machine that you create automatically. Because that would limit our network capabilities, because we would want to do some routing and so on later on, we will be changing the networking mode to bridged. Bridged mode means that the network card is on the same network range, same network neighborhood as the physical network card on your computer. So this is the part why we care about what IP address you have on your computer, on your host. Because if, for example, my IP address is 28.11, then my Prometheus IP address would be 28.111. Okay. So you need to have a different IP address that is on the same neighborhood as that one. So the same thing would happen with all of your computers. So if you have an IP address of 65, then your IP address for your Prometheus VM would be 165. Okay. So this way, we'll have direct access to the outside world, and we can do everything we want networking-wise with our computers. So once you set the bridge mode, you go on with the rest of it. You choose install CentOS. It will then give you some options. So now we've finished configuring the virtual machine itself. It's the equivalent of building a computer box. All right. And I will go on to the stage where we've inserted the DVD with the operating system, and we install the operating system on that computer. So we'll install the operating system on the virtual machine through the ISO image that we have. So once you play the virtual machine, once you power it on, it will start with the installation of the operating system, because it will have a blank 200 gigabyte hard drive, and it will have a CentOS DVD mounted, which will be the ISO image that you downloaded from the website. So to start with the installation, you will need to choose install CentOS 7. You need to set the language to English. You need to choose to do a new installation. It might ask you to do an upgrade or not. You can say no. Then you set up localization and everything else. And then you have various sections that will show up. So you have localization, you have date and time, you have keyboard layout, language support, and you have software installation source automatic. So that will find the ISO image on its own from the DVD. And then one of the sections that you need to make changes is the software selection. So exactly what you want to be installed inside your virtual machine. So for that, you need to choose development and creative workstation. So this is very important. You have two lists, a list on the left and a list on the right. So on the left, you need to choose, I think it's the last option down the bottom. That's called development and creative workstation. And then on the right, once you choose that, you have to check the boxes for compatibility libraries, DNS, development tools, file storage server, and everything else that is on this list. This step is extremely important. There is a reason why each and every one of these options is selected. Okay, if you don't select one of them, then later on in the labs, you will find out that you're missing something, some dependency, some service that should be there that isn't, in order for you to do a particular lab set. Okay, So if you're not 100% sure at this step that you've figured out the correct options for everything, call me at your desk. Okay, because once you install this and you get it wrong, then the solution will either be too complicated or a total disaster. So either I'll have to come and sit on your computer and spend about an hour installing the packages afterwards. The packages will be newer, different versions. It will be around Christmas. So maybe there will be updates to those packages, and I will not have tested the updated versions of what was installed. And you might find that you're in trouble and have to reinstall everything. Okay, so be very careful with the software selection on that section. Once you're done with that, then you need to go on to System and select the installation destination disk. All right, there should only be one hard drive showing up for your virtual machine, and it should be the virtual hard drive that you created that is 200 gigabytes in size. Okay, if you see anything else other than 200 gigabytes of space, or almost 200 gigabytes, okay, call me. Okay, something is wrong. So the way that this works is we do a little bit of customization here for a very simple reason. When you log in to your virtual machine, you will always log in as user root. All right. Now, this theoretically is the wrong way to go about it. Okay, because in every Linux box and in any computer in general, you should always log in as a user and elevate your privileges, so switch to super user account, only if you need to do something super usery. All right, something that requires administrative privileges. However, everything that you will do in this lab will require administrative privileges. Okay, it's what it is. All right, so you will always be logging in as user root, just to save you this hassle of changing directories, changing users, all the time. And because we're doing this, we want all of the virtual machines that you will create, and it will be a lot of data, it will be a few gigabytes of space. We want everything to be located in the /root directory. Hands up if you've used Linux before. Let's have it. Okay, great. So I'll explain this a little bit more then. Yes. So when you format the hard drive in Linux, it creates different directories. So the home directory, the top directory, is called /. And then after that /, there is the tree that holds all of the other folders. The folders that are there look something like there's a /root, there's a /boot, there's a /home, a /etc, /bin. There's a variety of them. Okay, in fact, one of the questions of this lab sheet is to explain what each of these folders actually does. Okay, so that you figure out what each of these folders actually does. Now, we don't want all of the data that we create to be stored in the /home directory. The home directory's job is to store the user accounts for everything. But because we'll be working as a super user all the time, we want everything to be stored in the root directory. Now, by default, when Linux formats hard drive, it gives a small percentage of the hard drive to the operating system and everything else, and it gives most of the partition to the /home directory, because it will assume that you will create a bunch of user accounts, and they will need to have the space available to use. That's not the case for us. We don't need a home directory to have the most space. All right. So we will change the way that we partition our hard drive. We'll give everything to the / directory. So we will not create a /home directory. So on the partitioning, you select the hard drive that's 200 gigabytes, and then you select I will configure partitioning and click done. Once you do that, the new window that appears, it might show you existing partitions. It shouldn't, because it's a brand new hard drive that you created, right? And then you need to click on the box on the line. I think it's a blue link, if I remember correctly. It says click here to create them automatically. So you click that box, it will create a few partitions on its own straight away. It will create whatever the operating system needs. Now, once those are created, you need to click on the home partition and delete it. because as we said, we don't need it because we won't have users. We'll be working as user root. And then you need to select the slash partition. And then you need to go into the box that says desired capacity. So that will be something like 50 gigabytes or less, maybe. All right. And from that, you just delete all the contents and you click on update settings. So if you click on update settings, it will then fill up the slash partition with all of the available hard drive space. So you should see about 180 something gigabytes of available space for your partition. Okay, so we're deleting the home partition and we're expanding, we're making the slash partition much bigger. This is what we're doing. This is the customization that we're doing with regards to partitioning our hard drive here. So once that's done, click accept settings and everything on, everything else. You go back to the main menu with all the different options for the installation, and you go to the network and host name area. So in there, you need to give it an IP address so that you can connect to the outside world. So we are using static IP addresses. We're not using automated IP addresses for our computers. Okay, and we know that our Prometheus virtual machine will need to have an address of 28.100 plus whatever your IP address is. All right, so we're going to set this up here. So it needs an IP address. Everything in the university starts with 148.197. We own. Okay, we as University of Portsmouth own the class B network of 148.197.0.0. Okay. If you know anything about networking, then you might realize that this is a big thing. Okay, owning something that has 65,000 IP addresses in it is a big thing. And the only reason it happened is because back in the early 90s, whenever the IP addressing schemes were invented, we had one of our system administrators, Philip True, and he thought it's a good idea to go and get a class B for himself. He did. And then now the university is ever so grateful for it. Okay, so this gives us the possibility to work with actual public IP addresses, okay, and not having to nut everything all the time. All right, so we think it's for your benefit. All right, so everything in the university starts with 148.197. When I mention an IP address, I will never mention 148.197. Okay, it is implied. So when I tell you that your address is 28 something, it means 148.197, 28 something. Okay, now the 28 part is this lab. So in this lab, all of your computers will be on subnet 28. So this is the class C subnet, and all of your hardwired network cards will connect to that one. All right, so all of the computers in here, 48 computers in here, are connected onto 28 dot something. All right, the something part, we'll figure it out if you type ifconfig on your computers. Now, these will be your IP addresses to connect your Prometheus virtual machine to the outside world. Okay, so I don't want to confuse you more and tell you what we'll be doing later, but we have other subnets that we can play with. So we have 30, 31, and 32 that we'll be playing with later on. But don't worry about it yet. You need to use your subnet mask. The gateway is 28.254. Okay, 254 is the last visible IP address on the network, and usually the gateway is what this is reserved for. We have a DNS server that's 148.197.28.1, and we have a self domain of netlab EE port ACVK. So netlab is everything in this lab. .EE is everything on this floor. It goes back to legacy because this used to be electronic engineering back in '97 when I came here to be a student. Then the port part is for everything that's in the University of Portsmouth. Okay, the AC is for Janet, the Joint Academic Network. So all of the universities in the UK belong to Janet. Right, it's a very nice, fast network. Yeah. And the UK is because, well, we're in the UK. Right, so someone has to be the boss of us. So the UK domain is this. All right, so netlab EE port AC UK gives you all of the levels of the naming conventions that we'll be using for our suffix part of the computer name. So your computer name will be prometheus.netlab.e.port.ac.uk. All right. This will be the same for everybody. All right. So set the host name to Prometheus, netlab.e.port.ac.uk, and then you can move on and click on begin installation. Installation should last about maybe 10 minutes. It should be pretty fast because you're working from an ISO image to an SSD, so it should copy the file. You will then need to reboot. It will ask you for the root password. This is important. So it will ask you for the administrator password, and that will be localhost 1. So again, in order to log into your virtual machine, your username will be root, and the password will be localhost 1. Okay. So once you do that, do the installation, finish, and so on. It will ask you to create a user account. You can create a user account, and you should, I think, forces you to, but you will never use it. Okay. So name the user account whatever you like. I don't care. Give it whatever password you like. I again don't care. As long as you never log in using that user account. Okay. When I come and sit on your computer and you're logged into your virtual machine, you should be logged in as user root. All right. Once that's done, then your system is now ready, and you can log in and you can use everything that you need. So now that you've built the operating system, and especially because most of you haven't used Linux before, the rest part of the lab set is very important. So it is some commands for you to figure out. So because it's Linux, we do lots of things on the terminal. So you open a terminal, and you know how you see on all these movies, the big hackers, they just open a black box and they just type everything in. So hopefully that should be you by the end of the semester. Okay, to a degree. So there are a bunch of commands that you need to know, otherwise you will not be able to continue and finish the lab sheets. And especially if you don't know them and you don't know what's happening, you will have very slow progress and you will not manage to finish all the lab sheets. Okay, so we'll start from like very simple commands like ls will list the contents of a directory. Yes, so you type ls in the terminal and it will tell you there is these files and these folders in here and so on. So I want you to type all these commands and figure out what they do. If you type a command and nothing happens, you need to read the manual. So there is a command, it's called man. Not as in man versus woman, man as in manual. All right. So why did they decide to abbreviate the manual to man? Because they wanted to save themselves typing those last 3 letters. Okay. So if you type man ls, it will tell you what the ls command actually does. Right. So you can do man cd, man with this, and so on and so forth. So there are some basic commands, and then there are the networking commands. They are very important, and you use them a lot during the entire year. Okay, so you need to know them as well. And in part 33 is the trickiest one, and that's why it's the last. You will need to manually disable your network card, and then manually enable it again and configure it with the correct IP address and all of the information that you need in order to access the internet. The good thing is that if you get this wrong, it doesn't matter. You can do service network restart and your network card will restart, or you can simply restart your virtual machine and everything will be working. Okay. The last part of this, which I call the bonus round, is for you to download and install Google Chrome and get it to run while you're logged in as user root. Linux in all of its wisdom, Red Hat version specifically, CentOS is one of them, doesn't allow you at all to run Chrome as a user, as a super user. Okay, they think that Chrome is not secure enough. They might be right, they're computer geeks, who knows. So you need to do something to Chrome itself so that it runs even when you're logged in as super user, when you're logged in as root. Ironically, you need to Google it and figure out what that something that you need to do to Chrome is, so that you can actually run Google Chrome as user root on your system. Okay. Once you find it, it's pretty straightforward and easy. And that's it. Okay. So you get started working on your computers. If you need any help, just raise your hand. Okay. I will need to spend maybe 10-15 minutes allocating computers to the users that are working remotely today. Okay, so there's 3 of them, as I say. All right. So I will do this at some point or another. All right. So start working. If you need anything, just raise your hand, and I will come and help you. Okay. All right. And you can also ask each other. Okay, if the person next to you is doing something that you don't know how they've done it, ask them, and they should help you. So that will save me all the trips of coming and helping you out. Okay, and it's not cheating or anything. Don't worry. What is cheating, or plagiarism, is if your logbooks have the same screenshots forever, which they should. All right. Yes. Give me a second.